I would use the word devastating.
Dangerous.
Precautions.
Depressing.
Spreading.
Violence.
Human nature.
Difficult.
Different.
Inconvenience.
Revolutionary.
Hate. Sad.
Uncertainty.
Keep going.
Inequality.
Responsibility.
Horrific.
领悟啊
Annoying.
Terrible.
Chance.
Change.
Change.
Uncertain.
A reset.
Chaotic.
Sucks.
I didn't expect you to be so serious, and then for so long as well, and the impact on my life would be so big. It changed a lot of the way I'm living now. So I didn't really expect this. So if I have to use one word, I would say crazy.
Lots of anxiety, uncertainty during that time, especially towards end of January, February time, when the infection was picking up pace in different countries, and it wasn't just located in China anymore.
Heathrow was always known as the busiest airport, one of the busiest airports, but it was so quiet, even at arrivals. Departures levels just like a ghost town. The moment you step out of your home, you are putting yourself and others at risk. And especially with getting on a plane, being in a confined environment with people you don't know. You don't know where they've been, you don't know where they're going to. And that is a massive risk, but you can only do your best, you know.
So I was working in my firm's Brussels office from the 4th of January 2020, really enjoying it, enjoying living in the European capital, making friends from all over Europe. 2.5 months in, it became apparent that the coronavirus situation worldwide was becoming very serious. And the national lockdown was announced on a Thursday night, and I got an email from the boss saying, "James, I think it's best if you go back to the UK and be close to your family."
I think the most difficult part as a house husband, especially during the lockdown, is in order to keep my family members safe. I am the only person who has to take risks to go outside, to leave the house. I go out once a week to the supermarket. Every time I finish shopping and come home with a full basket of food, I am like a harvest worker with plenty of reward, and that actually gives me satisfaction.
So it was my third trimester. So last year, 2019 December, was my first trimester. So I started hearing news about the coronavirus, and that's exactly the time. Then start concerning January, February, having all the news about what's happening in Asia. And baby was born in early March. And then the outbreak started while we were in the hospital.
The wave really hit towards March onwards, and a lot of staff unfortunately became unwell all at the same time. And it wasn't, in the first wave, it wasn't actually the severe amount of patients that was the most terrifying factor. It was actually the number of staff who would be off sick all at the same time, and that made it very short.
When COVID first started, it was very strange because nobody really knew what was happening, and there was suddenly the whole hospital became very, very quiet because even patients who actually needed treatment, they were quite scared of going into hospital.
And at the time, care homes were like the most prone to COVID, and the patients were most vulnerable because they were elderly. Some of the patients, they were very badly affected by COVID just because they didn't really understand what was going on. Nearly all of my colleagues had COVID at one point or another.
My main conflict was, especially right at the beginning, before the lockdowns, we were fully aware that PPE was important, but the government had different ideas. For whatever reason they had, and they just kind of discredited the use of wearing a mask.
There was a lot of resistance to accept that masks can work as well at the start, and I think that was down to culture. It was a completely different culture to how, say, my doctor friends in Hong Kong would have dealt with this situation.
It's common for Chinese wearing, especially medical workers, very a bit fussy about it. But when I was wearing and take a walk on the town wall in Chichester, I met two people. They suddenly stopped and stepped back, and I just felt like I was the virus.
Because in here, it's nobody wearing masks. You need quite courage to wear it. Otherwise, the people will staring at you like a virus like that. In the beginning, maybe if you're wearing like that, people staring at me like, oh, some monster come. Why you spread virus like that?
I remember right at the beginning when we weren't really quite well aware of how to manage the situation, and people were telling me, not to wear face masks as it would scare the patients. But actually, in the back of my mind, that's a bit. It feels a bit wrong to actually be telling staff members to be doing that.
So with the PPE, a lot of us bought our own masks, and during that time, we already knew we were going to be a big spreader from the staffing point of view as well. We knew a lot of us were going to catch it, likely spread it to our patients.
One of our senior doctor actually died of COVID, and it did at the time arouse a lot of sorrow within the team. But it's very difficult when you have a hospital with 3,500 staff, with COVID hitting the community, and we're the people who are managing all the very sick COVID patients. And at any one time, you got 10% of your staff got COVID. So out of those 10% of staff, you're bound to have one or two fatalities.
Both my lungs were full of water. And this is what causes double pneumonia. So when I was admitted, what I can recall, being half conscious, was that I was admitted immediately. Yes, there was no waiting, no ambulance waiting at the entrance, no hiatus, delay of any kind. I was emergency wheeled in immediately and tested. They didn't know what I had at the time. They suspected it was COVID because I had all the symptoms: high fever, breathing problems. I'd collapsed, obviously, couldn't breathe, and I was already masked up and on a ventilator. I was straight away into intensive care.
The next thing I remember was someone came in and said, well, your situation is really bad. The oxygen is not enough to support your life anymore. And I said, well, what are you going to do now? And he said, I'm going to have to put you onto a ventilator. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, we need to put a tube through your mouth to your lung. And I said, am I going to stay conscious while I do that? And he said, no, I will use sedation and put you to sleep. And I said, am I going to die? And he paused and he didn't answer me for like about a minute or two. And she actually held my hand and said, well, look, we're going to try our best. So I smiled and I was thinking, well, you're not sure whether I'm going to die or not, are you? So I didn't say that, but I was thinking that. And I texted my mum. I said, they're going to do this to me now, like to my family. And she said, well, what does that mean? And I said, well, if I make it, then I'll make it. If not, then, I had a very happy life. So there's nothing to regret.
I was actually working on ICU at around about 4 o'clock in the morning. I was asked to come and see a patient because they were on the maximum treatment therapy that they can have in the ward. I was telling him that you need to, we're going to have to get you off to sleep. He then frantically called his friends and family. Literally, I was listening to their conversation that, for him to say his goodbyes, for him to say, all my possessions just like distribute it amongst yourselves. He was trying to get in touch with his wife, but because it's 4 o'clock in the morning, he couldn't really get in touch with them.
Obviously, I've not lived very long, but I've not seen that many people pass away. I've not really seen a body bag before, but so I didn't know there were body bags until somebody pointed, and I was even questioning myself, why are people pushing these trolleys around with the blue bag on it? And it's all going to like near pharmacies. So I was like, stop pushing these people near pharmacy, like get them away. And then I realized, oh, I see, these are all people who have passed away.
Over time, you're just seeing death after death. It gets you down. It becomes very challenging on your mental health. It's very challenging as well telling the families, because they're not allowed to see their relatives.
So many patients, they supposed coming to us, but they choice died in home. Because if they coming to us, like especially the big family, they only allowed one visitor. So they choice stay home and died in home.
So my grandpa passed away in October this year. But these days, you can have those remote funerals. So yeah, it was obviously not ideal. I found it a lot harder to engage with it emotionally. It was probably, I didn't feel the same urge to, I wasn't. I had my emotions under control, and I think because you're not there in person, it's hard to have that same emotional sort of connection.
And our wedding were through Zoom, live streamed through the Zoom platform to, I think, more than 200 people. So technically, we have an even larger wedding than we would have otherwise.
We were supposed to get married, it was like 130 people we were supposed to invite, down to only 10 people, so that's quite a change. It kind of made you feel like you obviously weren't the only couple that were going through this. Like literally every married couple that was supposed to get married last year was going through the same thing, so you didn't feel so lonely.
I think having a baby during the pandemic helped us to be distracted of what's going outside of our home, because we were so concentrated. All of our attention was focused on raising this baby as best as we could. Our bubble was closed off. It was just a family of 3, especially with me working with the NHS in our laboratory, dealing directly, handling the virus. So it meant I avoided most of my family, who live very local.
And then after baby is born, we were told that baby's vaccination, the first one, is on the 8th week. And we need to prepare baby paracetamol, so Calpol, because one of the jab that she's gonna have will give her temperature, and she have to have the paracetamol before she have the jab, so to control the temperature. And nowhere's have it. It's nowhere. We can't find it anywhere in the country. People were definitely panic buying that, and I this one is really making me so panic, and I actually asking help from Hong Kong at that time. I still remember that my husband, he got really, really mad. I think it's very stressful that time. And he was crying. I never saw him cry.
I work in Morrison, this store
And since last year, May, during the lockdown, I've got the job. My shift starts at 5 in the morning and the store opens at 6 to the public. I'll tend to keep away from them because they're not very good at social distancing. It's constantly broadcasting over the tannoy, in the store to tell you you've got to have your face mask on, you've got to be doing social distancing, and got to be patient and got to be kind to people and all sort of thing. But people just, I don't think they really listen.
At work, 1 week, there's 20 people infected. Yes, especially when you hear like colleagues die, it scares you. Well, you have to work, isn't it? It's better than like no money, unemployed. It's even more scary, isn't it? Yeah.
I got the confirmation redundant, but cost cutting is definite to everybody in hospitality. Because in the past you have so many tourists come into central London, then you can sustain the rent. But nowadays, majority of your tourists is not in UK now, so it's very difficult for them.
I grew up in London, and I've always been to Chinatown more or less once a week, and just seeing it going from that bustling vibe to that quiet sort of forgotten place was just kind of really sad.
Well, at the start it was quite scary, so we closed the takeaway for 3 weeks because we're not sure like what's happening, basically, because it was quite closed up about what's going on. The government didn't give a lot of information, so once we did get the grant, we knew that we could shut because we could still pay the rent with the grant. So we got the 10,000, and then after about 3 weeks we decided to open back up the shop just for 2 days a week because the staff needed to work. And at the beginning, we got a lot of racism from the English people because they would run in and shout at you and stuff like that because they think it's a Chinese virus.
Co-workers, yeah, they actually particularly enjoy calling me Wuhan when there are a lot of people around. We actually know each other pretty well. Basically, yeah. Yeah, they kind of in a jokey way. At the same time, it's very unpleasant, those kind of stuff. Yeah, I asked them to stop, but they won't stop.
When it was compulsory, it's like we can't serve you without your face cover, putting the face covering on, and then they would just go ballistic and swear at you and saying the booze to you. And I don't know whether it is because I'm Chinese. I don't know about you, but I've been getting it since I've been in England as a child. So I grew up with it and sort of got used to it. It doesn't bother me. I don't take it to heart. So I just let it go over my head.
I think we need to concentrate on our well-being, our lives, how to move forward. So I would put a post out on Rainbow 88 Facebook, and I'd say, right, I'm cooking meals for the vulnerable this week. This Wednesday, I was cooking from home, and from what was meant to start from maybe 6 meals a week was literally 40, 50 meals every day. And I carried on, and I stopped when the restaurant opened. I carried on when the lockdown came, and I just kept doing that. And then to date now, I've got something to celebrate because I've cooked on my own from home with the help of all the donators, 4,000 meals for the local community. So anyone who was vulnerable, elderly, NHS staff, key workers, people struggling.
Before the lockdown, also during the lockdown, I do quite a lot of work, focusing on community support, how to support our community, how to gather the Chinese queer together is something like that. But because in June and in July around the world is a Pride Month, and I start to think, should I need to do something to let Chinese queer people also can feel pride during this very important month.
I work in a salon, so I'm a hairdresser, and I'm not working at the moment because obviously we do have our work social media, so it was always managed to say like don't cut your own hair, don't cut your own fringes and stuff like that. And obviously a lot of people were ringing up on FaceTime and saying, oh, how do I do this, or am I doing this right? Besides that, yeah, just advising them what do and what don't to do.
After the haircut, he gave me 25-pound tips. That was a big surprise. And then he said to me, thank you very much to come to join, spend your, in this very dangerous time, to come to spend your time to take care of myself. Because his wife tried to cut his hair, make a hole in the middle. And then he told me, my God, thank you very much to save my hair.
During the lockdown, I cannot do much other things. So building the granny annex can keep me motivated and keep me physically fit. For the goal of the building is measurable and achievable.
And I had time to learn gardening, start gardening. We have a little small garden, yes. But gardening is therapeutic as well.
I bought a new bicycle after the first subsidence of the first wave. In September, we organized a bike ride from London to a place called Brighton. I ganged up with 12 other colleagues, 13 of us, and I turned that into a charitable event. Well, enough. We raised something like £13,000 in just one single trip.
So many neighbors, when they walk past week by week, and they see the progress of the building, even up to now, I still got people chatting with me about the building. They are so interested in how I can manage to build it. Sadly, I lost 5 to 6 neighbors. Another couples lived next door to me. They both infected COVID-19, and the wife admitted to hospital. When I saw the ambulance come and take her away, I prayed for her. They have 3 young children. I pray for them as well.
The second wave, from my experience, I was working more in respiratory, so I was dealing with a lot of the COVID, very unwell COVID patients. So I felt in the second wave it was even more overwhelming in terms of numbers of COVID patients. It was another level. People were deteriorating very rapidly. It was just very intense. A lot of people were dying. A lot of people were very unwell, and all at the same time, very overwhelming.
Just very recently, I think October, that 2 out of the 3 patients, co-patients who had shared a general ward with me just one night, 2 or 3 of them did not survive.
Slowly and bit by bit, I came back to consciousness and was able to speak again. And then apparently I was told at that point that I had a risk of being sort of suffering from permanent nerve or brain damages because I've been put into sedation for so long, and there could be nerve damages.
After the second the lockdown and the second wave, they are increasing the we say confirmed COVID patients, but also the non-COVID syndromes come to see me, such as loss of smell and taste, such as the anxiety, stress, such as the tinnitus, etc. This is a big impact, not only physically, but mostly mentally.
So I was talking to this nurse who was operating this MRI machine for me, and she just went, going through chemotherapy is hard, isn't it? And I said, oh, I'm not because that hospital is also a cancer center. And I said, I'm not a cancer patient. I'm not on chemo. And she just looked at me like, oh, because when I got up from the MRI machine, it was covered in my hair. And as I was standing talking to her, she could just see my hair is kind of just falling like that, literally like dropping rain. So I was almost bald at the heaviest point. So I was losing the amount of hair a normal person would lose probably in 3 months' time in one day.
So I am completely against this idea of allowing COVID to live among us at this mortality rate, and the consequences of even having COVID for months. There's long COVID, and it's still so much unknown about it. This would not be a good idea to accept this kind of disease in our society and quote unquote learn to live with it.
I'm not sure that the COVID-19 will end very soon, or it will likely be with us forever. I don't know. So our lives may never be the same again.
So we will appreciate human contact more, I think. So I don't think there's going to be a big shift in how we behave. I think we'll behave largely the way we were before the pandemic, until the next pandemic.
There will be another pandemic in my lifetime, I think. I've already had 2 in 30 odd years of life. So, and I think this pandemic in a way gave us, our Mother Earth, a bit of a break.
This pandemic, and during this pandemic, and we can realize during the lockdown, the whole oxygen is clean, the whole air is clear, but that already give us a signal. We need to realize our Earth is sick.
I think a lot of people have noticed that the pollution also drastically dropped, and as a result, you had this glimpse of what could be achieved.
I don't have such feeling of very hopeful future. I just feel very how to say, despair.
I don't know. I think I got so used to lockdown life, I might have trouble readjusting to the coming back out.
My own life, social life, has gone out the window. I hardly keep in touch with anyone. Occasionally WhatsApp, yes, but that's very different, etc. and so forth. And of course, general public, when I do go out for food shopping, etc., I choose the quietest times, just before closing, for example.
I do start wearing the mask in my dream. There are few dreams I can remember. I realized I was in a shopping mall, and then I didn't have my mask. I was quite panicked, and I was looking for a shop to get a mask. But then with so many people around me, I was scared. Now I feel like when I see people, I'll try to stay away, keep some distance.
I feel blessed during this pandemic. I'm a Christian, and I just think God has been there to protect and provide for me and my family.
I miss my family so much. Even if it's just for a day or two, I just want to give them a hug. Tell them I'm okay, physically. I'm really, really okay.
I'm really proud of myself as a Chinese, representing a Chinese nurse. So, and all my colleagues knows that Chinese nurses work very hard, and they all know because I told them that's Chinese way.
very happy to take part in the oral history project to help the Chinese communities in the UK.
This project is so important because it mainly presents the life stories of key workers during this pandemic.
Their story truly inspired me.
Creating and archiving our voices is a recognition that many Chinese people have been wronged during the pandemic.
It preserves some important historical materials for the future generation who would be interested in understanding how ordinary people lived through difficult and chaotic times.
COVID has separated people over the past 18 months, but through this project, it has also brought people closer together via listening and sharing each other's stories and experience from all over the UK.